I want you to picture a scene. You are in a high-stakes meeting. The coffee is completely stale, the tension is just incredibly high, and the whiteboard is covered in these frantic scribbles.
Right, a classic Tuesday.
Yeah, exactly. A classic Tuesday. You've got the visionary shouting about changing the world, the sales guy promising numbers that seem physically impossible, and everyone is just talking over everyone else. It's pure chaos.
The standard corporate cacophony.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then you glance over at the end of the table, and there sits a colleague. Let's just call them the quiet one. They haven't said a single word in 40 minutes. They aren't on their phone. They aren't doodling. They're just watching. And honestly, it's a little unnerving. You start to wonder, are they even with us? Do they even care?
And that is usually the exact moment that person clears their throat, asks one devastatingly simple question, and the entire room goes silent.
Right.
Because they just pointed out the one structural flaw that was about to sink the whole ship.
That is exactly the moment. And that is why we are here today. We aren't just talking about introverts or, shy people. We are decoding a very specific, highly calibrated personality architecture. Today, we're doing a deep dive into the FAWU, or as the source material calls it, the silent watcher.
It is arguably one of the most misunderstood profiles in the entire database.
And if you are listening right now and thinking, well, I'm loud, so this isn't for me, stay tuned. Because you are probably working with a FAWU, or you're married to one, and you are almost certainly misinterpreting their silence.
Oh, absolutely. It's usually read as disinterest when it's actually intense, hyper-focused activity.
So let's unpack this. We are pulling this from the Max Energy ME80 personality system.
Yeah.
And before we get to the specific profile, give us the 30-second primer on what ME80 actually is, because it feels very different from the usual Myers-Briggs kind of stuff.
It is very different. Most systems out there categorize you by your traits, like are you friendly, are you organized, do you like parties? The Max Energy ME80 looks at your energy flow.
Energy flow.
Yeah, it's like looking at the schematics of a circuit board rather than just looking at the plastic case of the computer. It maps how energy activates inside you, how your brain processes logic and emotion, and then how all of that manifests externally.
So it's basically the operating system manual.
Exactly. And the FAWU, the silent watcher, has a fascinating, highly complex operating system.
Okay, let's dive right in. Let's start with the identity. The source material gives them what it calls a core declaration. It defines their identity as inward vigilance.
Inward vigilance.
Yeah.
That is the key to understanding them. The report defines them with this really powerful image. It says the silent watcher uses quietness as a radar, detecting hidden movements beneath the surface.
I love that concept, quietness as a radar. Because usually in our culture, silence is viewed as a void. It's an absence, like if you aren't talking, you aren't doing anything.
Yeah.
But this suggests that the silence is actually a tool.
It's a very active tool. While the extroverts in the room are broadcasting, sending a signal out, the silent watcher is exclusively in receiving mode. They are gathering data, because if they were talking, they couldn't hear the signal.
And what exactly are they listening for? The report mentions a control mechanism. What is that?
So they operate on what the system calls a global view philosophy. They are constantly looking for structural integrity.
That sounds like we're talking about architecture or engineering.
It essentially is engineering, but for social and business systems. When a silent watcher sits in that chaotic meeting we talked about, they aren't getting swept up in the hype or the emotion. They are scanning for a few very specific things. First, does the logic hold up? Second, are the human intentions shifting? And third, most importantly, is the system tilting?
Is the system tilting? What does that mean in practice?
They have this innate sense of balance. If a project is over-leveraged, or if a family dynamic is slowly becoming toxic, they feel the tilt before anyone else even sees the crash. Their entire goal, their philosophical driver, really is early warning discernment. They want to prevent the collapse.
So they aren't trying to win the debate or be the smartest guy in the room. They're literally just trying to keep the building standing.
Precisely. Unlike other profiles that rush to declare a position or take a side, seeing clearly is the absolute prerequisite for the silent watcher to make any judgment. They literally cannot move until they have verified the stability of the ground they're standing on.
Which brings us to the actual mechanics of how they do this, the energy matrix. This is where the ME80 system gets a bit technical, but it perfectly explains why they act the way they do.
Yeah.
We have these three layers, IP, IQ, and EQ. Let's walk through the stack.
Okay, let's open up the motherboard. It starts with the IP layer. That stands for the inner value layer. This is the ignition point. And for the silent watcher, this energy activation is entirely internal.
Meaning they don't need a cheerleader to get going.
Correct. Some profiles need external validation. They need money, applause, immediate feedback to get moving. The silent watcher is a self-starter. They are driven by an intense internal sense of responsibility. They don't do the work for the credit. They do it because they feel a profound duty to maintain the standard.
Okay, so the engine is running on its own. Now the data moves up to the processing layers, the IQ and EQ. And this is where the report implies things get really heavy.
This is the crux of the whole profile. The silent watcher is running two almost contradictory programs simultaneously. First, there's the IQ layer, the emotional activation layer. For them, this layer is set to structural and principled judgment.
That's just cold logic.
Pure binary code. It's all about rules. Is this fair? Does A plus B equal C? If the rule says no parking, they just see no parking. It's rigid, it's structural, it's black and white.
But then there's the EQ layer right next to it.
Right, the decision calculation layer. And this one is set to emotional perception and resonance.
Wait, so they are hyperlogical, but they're also scanning for feelings at the same time.
Yes. And that is a massive cognitive load. Just think about the friction there. They are analyzing the spreadsheet to see if the financial numbers work. That's the IQ. While simultaneously scanning the room to see if the boss is lying or if the design team is totally stressed out. That's the EQ.
That sounds completely exhausting. Most people struggle to do even one of those things well.
It is exhausting. They are constantly cross-referencing these two streams. The logic says we should fire this person because of performance, but the emotional resonance says firing them right now will destroy the entire team's morale. They are stuck synthesizing these two opposing streams of data before they can act.
And this leads to the final piece of the matrix, the manifestation layer. How does all this intense internal swirling actually show up to the outside world?
That's the trick. The energy direction is inward. The manifestation is all about carrying, absorbing, and integrating.
So they just hold it all.
They hold it. They do not explode outward. If an extroverted, highly expressive profile is stressed, you know it instantly. They're venting, they're gesturing. If a silent watcher is stressed, they just get quieter. They are containing that massive processing load inside, kind of like a server room. It looks like a boring, quiet metal box from the outside, but inside, the fans are spinning at 10,000 RPM.
That perfectly explains the poker face. It's not that they don't have feelings or don't care. It's that they're busy processing those feelings alongside the cold logic, entirely internally.
Exactly. And this rigorous internal processing leads directly to their intrinsic superpower. The source material calls it high sensitivity early warning.
The radar again.
Yes. The text actually says they have already surveyed the whole before moving. When a new task or a new project lands on their desk, they instantly enter scanning mode. They systematically cross-check the flow, the logic, and the interpersonal dynamics in their head.
Give me a real-world example of what that looks like.
Okay, imagine a family planning a big vacation. The enthusiastic personality types are shouting, "Let's go to Disney World, let's drive, it'll be a road trip." They are totally focused on the desire and the excitement. Meanwhile, the silent watcher is just sitting there, and their brain is instantly mapping out all the friction points. They're thinking it's August, so the heat index is 105. The car needs new tires before a road trip. The toddler hasn't been sleeping well this week.
So they're basically the buzzkill.
To the enthusiasts, yeah, they feel like a massive buzzkill, but actually, they are the safety net. They aren't trying to ruin the fun. They are trying to ensure the fun is actually physically possible. They are detecting the latent risks that will cause a complete meltdown on day 2 of the trip.
But I can see where the friction happens, whether it's in relationships or at work, because to the outside observer, this scanning process just looks like hesitation. It looks like they are dragging their feet or they just don't want to do it.
It does look like that. And that brings us perfectly to the shadow blind spot, because every ME80 profile has one. For the silent watcher, their blind spot is decision deferral.
Like analysis paralysis.
Similar, but specifically a paralysis driven by a severely low tolerance for error. Because they see all the variables, they also see all the potential failure points.
Ignorance is bliss, and they are definitely not ignorant.
Right. The less you know, the easier it is to just say, let's do it. The silent watcher sees every single crack in the pavement. So they get stuck in this endless verification loop. They check the details, then they check them again, then they cross-check the people involved.
And what happens if they don't feel confident after all that checking?
The report is very clear on this dynamic. If they lack confidence in the execution capacity, meaning if they look at you and they don't trust that you can actually pull off this wild plan, they will prefer to just observe rather than declare a position.
So they just stop.
They withdraw. They won't fight you. They won't scream and shout that your plan is doomed. They will just step back, get quiet, and watch. And this leads to what the system calls over-internalized judgment. They are judging the situation very harshly, but they aren't sharing the judgment out loud. It really slows down their decision velocity.
And holding all that in has to take a toll on them personally.
A huge toll. It causes deep self-depletion. They burn out, but not necessarily from working too many physical hours, but from holding too much unexpressed worry. They're carrying the heavy weight of the potential failure, fixing all the problems in their head, but in reality, nothing is actually moving forward.
That is such a crucial insight for anyone listening. If you are a silent watcher and you feel completely drained, even on days where you didn't supposedly do much, it's because you were mentally holding up the ceiling all day.
You never put the weight down.
Exactly. Let's pivot and talk about how this plays out socially. Because despite all this heavy, serious internal processing and the over-internalized judgment, they aren't usually the grumpy troll hiding in the corner. The report uses a phrase for their social dynamic that I really liked: warm detachment.
That's a lovely oxymoron, isn't it? Warm detachment.
What does that actually look like, say, at a dinner party?
Outwardly, the silent watcher is usually very pleasant. They deeply value harmony. They often have a great sense of humor. They completely understand social propriety. They are generally easy to get along with because they aren't looking to start a fight. They'll laugh at your jokes. They'll nod at your stories. But there's a glass wall. You might talk to them for 2 solid hours and realize on the drive home that you learned absolutely nothing about them. They kept the focus entirely on you. They were observing, analyzing, nodding, but they were not letting you inside the server room.
It's a defense mechanism, then.
It's energy conservation. They maintain distance. And this warm detachment dictates their conflict style, too. When they are disappointed or when a relationship goes wrong, they do not choose direct confrontation. They choose cooling and withdrawal.
Ah, the slow fade.
The slow fade. If a silent watcher is angry at you, they won't flip the table. They will just become noticeably less available. When trying to fix a problem with someone, they use subtle adjustments.
Can you explain subtle adjustments? What does that mean?
Instead of saying, hey, this marketing report you wrote is garbage, they might say, have we double-checked the formatting on page 3? They nudge, they hint, they try to fix the structural problem without causing a massive emotional wave.
And if the other person completely ignores the hint?
Then the silent watcher just steps back. They figure, look, I warned you, you didn't listen to the subtle adjustments, so now I am just going to watch what happens. They protect themselves by distancing.
That is almost scarier than a shouting match, honestly. With shouting, at least you know exactly where you stand.
Exactly. With the silent watcher, silence is the loudest form of disapproval.
So knowing all this, knowing about this high-powered radar, this absolute need for structural integrity, this risk aversion, where do they belong in the professional world? Like if I'm a CEO, where do I put a FAWU to get the most business value out of them?
You put them at the gate. The ME80 report defines their core business value as risk prediction and quality assurance.
The invisible gatekeeper.
Yes. In a modern startup culture that absolutely loves to move fast and break things, the silent watcher is the essential counterweight. They are the ones saying, you know, maybe let's not break the one thing that keeps the company alive.
We definitely need a lot more of that energy.
They provide low noise, yet high stability capacity. They're the ones who detect latent risks before they cascade into unfixable disasters. They are the invisible gatekeepers of long-term quality and trust.
The report lists some specific recommended careers. Risk management and quality control are obvious ones, given everything we've talked about, finding those structural problems.
Any field where meticulous attention to detail is prized, high-standard roles like audit or precision manufacturing, but it also recommends research analysis and strategic assessment.
Why strategy? Isn't strategy usually reserved for the big picture, pie-in-the-sky visionaries?
Visionaries dream the dream. Silent watchers check if the dream is physically and financially possible. They write the deliberated feasibility study, they do the system optimization, correcting the little friction points that the visionary completely ignores, but that would ultimately sink the project.
So they're the ones who actually make the grand strategy executable in the real world.
Correct. Their results aren't flashy. You will almost never see a silent watcher doing a victory lap around the office, but their work completely withstands scrutiny.
It's funny, their work is almost defined by what doesn't happen. The massive lawsuit that didn't get filed, the server bridge that didn't collapse, the marketing budget that didn't blow up.
And that is exactly why they are so often undervalued. It is really hard for a company to give a bonus for disasters that didn't occur. But that is their true contribution, continuous correctness.
I think this is a huge takeaway for anyone in management. If you have a team member who is quiet, who asks somewhat annoying questions about details, who seems to drag their feet on exciting new risky ideas.
Do not try to fix them. Don't try to force them to be a hype man. Listen to them. If the quirkiest person in the room expresses a structural concern, you need to treat it like a fire siren.
Treat it like a siren. I really like that.
Because they've already run the entire simulation in their head. If they're actually speaking up and breaking their silence, it means the simulation crashed.
As we wrap up this profile, the source material offers a concluding thought, a golden sentence, that really beautifully sums up the essence of the silent watcher.
It's a great summary. It reads, "The silent watcher does not prove value through volume, but reduces error occurrence through continuous correctness. True influence for them is moving everything steadily forward in places where no one is watching."
In places where no one is watching. That really validates the invisible, heavy work they do every day. It's not about the credit. It's about the integrity of the system.
And the stability. We take stability for granted all the time, but it requires a massive amount of internal energy to maintain. The silent watcher provides that energy.
So if you've been listening to this and realizing, wait a minute, that's me, hopefully this deep dive validates that your overthinking is actually a high-performance radar. You aren't slow, you're just highly calibrated.
And if you love a silent watcher or you work with one every day, respect their processing time. Give them the space to run their simulation. The answer they finally give you will be worth the wait.
Now, just a quick reminder for everyone, this profile we've unpacked today, the FAWU, the Silent Watcher, comes directly from the Max Energy ME80 Personality Assessment Report. It's an incredibly deep system, and we've really only scratched the surface of just one archetype today.
There are dozens of configurations in the system. It really changes how you see human interaction when you understand the hidden energy flow behind it.
If you want to dive deeper into your own profile or just understand the other types of people in your life, you need to visit their official website. That is www.maxenergylife.com.
And there are some really great communities online discussing this system, too. You can search Facebook for Jun Nangliang Ren Jieshu, or you can search for Nangliang Ren Jieshin Yuli.
We will definitely put those links and the exact pinyin search terms in the show notes so you can just copy and paste them. It is absolutely worth checking out because understanding your internal operating system is the very first step to running it better. And before we go, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. We talked a lot about the disasters that silent watchers prevent. It makes you wonder, what if the most important thing happening in your life right now is a disaster that someone quietly prevented yesterday, and you'll just never even know about it?
That is a very humbling thought. It really makes you appreciate the quiet ones.
It really does.
Huh.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the invisible world of the silent watcher. Keep your radar on, trust your gut, and we'll catch you in the next deep dive.
Goodbye, everyone.